that takes care of the back of the house. You wanna go around and take the lights off the front?
Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, hey, by the way, thank you. If it wasn't for you, I don't know who'd get on that roof. You are awesome.
Yeah. Is that the house you were talking about?
Oh, yeah.
They leave their lights up all year round.
They leave their lights on all year long. Here, check it out.
So they leave their lights on all year long?
All year long. And those bulbs change according to whatever holiday season it is.
Get out.
Can't wish I could.
So like July 4th?
Those bulbs come red, white, and blue.
Thanksgiving.
Harvest colors.
Halloween.
Black and orange.
Memorial Day.
Camouflage.
Get out.
Can't wish I could.
I bet it's embarrassing for the neighbors.
Oh, the neighbors. We're totally embarrassed. We complain about it all the time. Oh, and when there is no holiday season going on, those bulbs become little red hot chili pepper lights.
What?
Yep.
Give me one good reason why you should celebrate the pepper.
Can't wish I could.
It's like your neighbors are the Motel 6.
And my wife, she's always saying, let's just leave the lights on just a little bit longer. Let's just stay in the spirit of things. But when Christmas is over, you take down the lights. Am I right?
I don't know. I'm not even the right guy to ask. I don't even put lights on my house.
Why don't you put lights on your house?
I'm afraid of heights. But the question is, why do you put lights on your house?
To celebrate Christmas, the birth of Christ, all that kind of stuff.
There you go. That's your answer.
What?
If you don't want to celebrate Christ all year long, then take the lights down.
That's not what I was saying. You're putting words in my mouth. You're siding with my wife.
Hey, I'm not siding with anyone. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that you and God were,
On the outs?
Yeah.
We're not on the outs. Me and God, we're very tight. We're very, very tight.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Prove it.
Prove what? Are you daring me to leave my lights on all year long?
Hey, no dare here. I'm just saying, you gonna let your little light shine?
Wait! Man the ladder, my friend.
What?
Man that ladder. We're gonna get back up there and hang these lights.
No. Oh, I was just kidding.
Oh, yes. It is gonna be a proclamation of my faith.
Didn't you hear? I'm afraid of heights.
You're already up there. Honey, get the apple cider ready. Put on the Perry Como records. These lights are gonna shine. Get back here. These lights have to shine.
Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Good. Welcome to Blue Oaks. I hope you had an incredible Christmas. I know my family had a wonderful Christmas. My oldest daughter, Kenna, is 3.5, and so this is kind of the first Christmas that she really got it. You know what I'm saying? Like, she knew what Christmas was all about. We took her to the mall the day after Thanksgiving, right? Because we wanted her to see Santa Claus. And she knew what was up. There were no tears this time, no hiding behind mom. She ran full speed, 3.5 years old, jumped on Santa, went on his lap, and Santa asked my daughter, Kenna, what would you like for Christmas, little girl? And she said, a unicorn rocking horse. Santa turned, no joke, and looks at me and goes, good luck with that. So Santa ordered this super rare unicorn rocking horse on Amazon like a month before Christmas, right? Wanted to make sure it had plenty of time to make it. Well, 1 week goes by, no unicorn. Santa's not too alarmed. 2 weeks go by, still no unicorn. The third week comes, and now I'm trying to track the shipment. I'm trying to figure out, where did this unicorn fly off to? I mean, come on now. And it turns out my good friends at UPS lost that poor unicorn, or he escaped or whatever. But you can imagine Santa was pretty unsettled at that point because rare unicorn rocking horses are really hard to come by. They don't exactly grow on trees. So Santa fearfully approached Amazon once again the week before Christmas looking for another rocking horse. And thankfully, it was a Christmas miracle. It made it right in time before Christmas. We avoided a huge Christmas catastrophe at the Raymer house this year. So it was a great Christmas. It's really good to be at Blue Oaks this morning, isn't it? I'm really glad that you're here. Christmas Eve is actually the most popular day to attend church all year. And the Sunday after Christmas Eve is actually the least popular day to come to church all year. So, and the Dallas Cowboys are playing right now, so I'm sure a lot of people are at home watching that, right? Any Dallas Cowboys fans in the house? No one slash my tires, please. No, I'm really glad that you're here today. Will you take a second and just pull out your bulletin, the one you got when you came in? Everyone, if you've been here 100 times, you've been here once, we all do it. It's awesome. Fold on the perforated line. Perforated, that's a big word. Youth pastors and the word perforated don't go together real well. And then just everyone tear at the same time. Bam. Awesome. Good job. Okay, and then take the piece that you still have and hold it in your hand. You'll notice on the back we have a lot of room for prayer requests. If you have a prayer request, please write that in this spot, and then we will commit to pray for you specifically and confidentially too. We're not going to tell anyone what you share with us. You'll also notice on the front of the card there are these next steps. Next steps are for you so that you can try to apply the teaching to everyday life. So when you leave, we don't want you to leave saying, oh, that was challenging or good, and then if you're like me, you forget 5 minutes later over lunch. But this you can take with you, and it'll help remind you what commitments you might have made this morning. Also, if you're new to Blue Oaks Church, or if you've been with us but you've never filled out a Next Steps card, you can fill that out and put it in the offering plate. There's a place for you to let us know, hey, I visited Blue Oaks Church for the first time, and then we're going to stalk you. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that. But we will send you some information about Blue Oaks and a gift in the mail as well. Also, I would love to meet you after the service in the new guest area out in the courtyard. If you're here with us for the very first time this morning, we have a gift that we want to give you. So come to the new guest area, and we'll give you that gift after the service, okay? Enough about that. So Christmas is over, and it's time to pack everything away into the closets, the attic, and the garage until Thanksgiving next year, right? I don't know about you, but the worst part of the holiday season has to be just undoing all the decorations that you've done in order to celebrate Christmas, and then trying to store them away. Do you notice that the decorations you take out of the boxes never quite fit back into the boxes? Anyone else have that problem, or is it just me? It's a big problem. But you have to go and you have to take down your lights. And I really don't like taking down the lights every year. It's my least favorite part of the holiday season. But you have to take them down because that's just what you do. And then next year, you're going to put them up again, and the vicious cycle will continue for ages to come, I'm sure. Well, I recently was watching an episode of the Shark Tank. Anyone seen that before? There was this brilliant guy on the Shark Tank. Maybe it's one of you. If so, can I have $1 million? Thanks, appreciate it. But this guy on Shark Tank, he was so brilliant, he was trying to sell this system that allowed people to hide their Christmas lights under the overhang of their house using a hook system. And so then when it's time for Christmas next year, you just get on your ladder and you move the lights back down so that everyone can see them again. And it's this guy just figured it out. I mean, he solved my problem. I really like this guy. Now you just hide your lights under the overhang until next year. It's awesome. I didn't buy his system yet, but I think it's actually not a bad idea because I hate taking down Christmas lights so much. I hate putting them up again every single year. And as I watched this guy on Shark Tank, I realized something about what he was trying to do. He was trying to help me hide my lights all year until next Christmas. And I wonder how many of us sort of live like this in a spiritual sense. We let our lights shine brightly around the holidays, especially at Christmas and Easter, but the rest of the year we're looking for a place to hide our spiritual light. Well, I want us to resist the urge to box Jesus up and store him away in 2015. I don't want to do that this year. You know, Jesus talked a lot about lights in the Bible and in his teaching. In fact, Jesus called himself not only the light, but he called himself the light of the world. In fact, John quoted Jesus in John chapter 8, verse 12, and he said, Jesus said this about himself. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Again, in John chapter 9, verse 5, John tells us that Jesus said, while I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Well, this morning, I want to spend some time looking at this idea of light and what it means for us as we look forward to this new year, to this new beginning. And we're going to start by looking at a passage in Matthew chapter 5 in which Jesus calls us the light of the world. So you can turn to Matthew chapter 5 in your Bible or on your Bible app. But before we jump into Jesus' teaching about being light, will you pray with me? Dear Jesus, thank you so much for bringing us together to worship you today. Thank you for the incredible things you've done in this past year. We ask you, Jesus, to do even more awesome work in hearts and lives. God, we just ask that you would radically change our community. Help us this season of change not to focus just on ourselves and to make resolutions about us, but help us to ask what you want to do with our lives in this new year. Help us not to leave here the same as we came. In Jesus' name. Everybody said? All right, let's start reading in Matthew chapter 5, starting with verse 14. Jesus said, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." You know, New Year's is kind of a hard time of the year for many people. It's easy to get into sort of a post-Christmas funk. You know what I'm saying? You spend a week hanging out with all of your family and your best friends, and you're celebrating the birth of Jesus and everything that that means for your lives, and then it's just into the blah, like blah. You start thinking about packing up all the Christmas decorations, taking the lights off the house, putting the stockings away, and it's just sort of a downer time by nature. And I think that's why we celebrate New Year's right after Christmas, just so we can sort of wean ourselves off of the holidays. You know what I'm saying? It can be really depressing during the dead week between Christmas and New Year's. You now have this time on your hands because everyone's left and they've gone home, and you're just left with your thoughts. And you're probably left with that food coma from eating all those desserts over the holidays, right? The one that you're going to try to get rid of in 2015. It's right about now, at this time of year, most of us start thinking about New Year's resolutions. We start planning for the best year of our lives, the best year ever. We look out at 2015 and we see all this opportunity and we see excitement, and we're just looking forward to what this year could be. I know exactly how you feel because I feel that same way. I have this anticipation. I'm more pumped about 2015 than I've ever been about an upcoming year. And I really believe this is going to be an incredible year. You know, I look back on 2014, I can't believe that Blue Oaks has been meeting here at Foothill for a year and a week now. I mean, this is our 53rd Sunday here at Foothill, and it's our last Sunday together for the year 2014. And we've seen God do incredible things in the last 12 months. We've seen tons of compassion happening because people like you have gotten passionate about serving and loving on those in our community. We've seen lots of people find Jesus and come to know him over the past 12 months, and nothing could be more exciting than that. Nothing. While thinking about my New Year's resolutions, I decided this year is going to be different. Can anyone relate to that, right? You tell yourself, this year is going to be different, I promise. Over the years, my New Year's resolutions have been pretty consistent, and I bet you can probably identify with me. For instance, in 2010, I made the New Year's resolution to read at least 30 books a year. Big resolution. In 2011, I just made a minor tweak to that, and I committed to read at least 15 books a year, because 30 was just way too many, right? In 2012, I resolved myself to read at least 5 books a year, because who am I kidding? 15 was just a lot with my busy schedule, right? In 2013, it was, this year I'm going to finish reading The Hunger Games. And then in 2014, I vowed to finish reading at least the comic section of the newspaper. Another great resolution, I'm going to lose some weight this year. That's a pretty popular resolution. Most of us make some version of that promise to ourselves every year, right? My resolution in years past were to get my weight down below X number of pounds. You didn't think I was going to throw out a real number, did you? This is not a counseling session. Then in 2012, I decided, you know what? I'm going to get realistic about my weight loss goals, and I committed to work out 5 days a week. And then in 2013, I made the decision, you know what? I'm going to work out 3 days a week. And then in 2014, I decided that I would try to drive by a gym at least once a week. You guys are probably a lot like me. We make these New Year's resolutions, and we rarely follow through on them. And And then we get to the end of a year and we get to the precipice of a new year and we just feel guilty about our failures. Feel guilty about the things we haven't done that we told ourselves we were going to do. Harvard psychologist Amy Cuddy says that we're really bad at setting reasonable goals. And when we don't meet an unreasonable goal, we fill ourselves with feelings of anxiety. And we actually just lower our self-worth. Well, what if this year could be different? What if this year could be different? What if 2015 was the year that you decided you were going to make a resolution that makes a difference in someone else's life? One of the most popular New Year's resolutions people make every year is to start attending church. There are going to be a lot of people who make the resolution to get back into church in 2015. And starting next Sunday, we'll see some new faces of people who stood back and they evaluated their past year and they decided, you know what? The most important thing I can do, the greatest resolution I can make is to get back into church. You know, during this season, people are more open to trying church than at any other time of the year. In fact, this is the perfect time of the year to start bringing people that you know to church with you. Tom Rainer wrote in his book, The Unchurched Next Door, that the number one reason that most people come to Christ in a church is because someone that they've known for less than 1 year brings them to church with them. You notice I use the word bring as opposed to the word invite? Invite sort of has this casual feel to it, like, hey, you know what? I'm going to invite my friend to church, but they're probably never going to come, and they'll probably turn me down. No, I'm not going to invite anyone to church. I'm going to bring my friend to church with me. If I have to bribe them with lunch after church or breakfast before church or a new car, it's whatever it takes. I'll do whatever it takes. Just kidding. We're not really giving out new cars to get people to come to church. But I don't think that the casual invite to church is going to get the job done. And I don't think it's been getting the job done. Let me ask this, for instance. If you learned that there was a cure for cancer and your coworker of 10 plus years had cancer, how forceful would you be about getting your coworker to the hospital to get that cure? What if it was your wife, your mom, your child? You would stop at nothing to make sure they got the cure to cancer because you recognize in that moment how desperate their situation is. They have cancer. Well, let me tell you, their physical condition with cancer is probably really bad, but your coworker's spiritual condition without Jesus is way more desperate. All throughout the scriptures, light is contrasted with darkness. In Genesis chapter 1, the first chapter in the Bible, God spoke, and the first recorded words of God that we have were what? God said, "Let there be light." Let there be light. And guess what? There was light that separated from the darkness. Light was God's answer to the darkness that covered and enveloped the earth. And all throughout the Bible, God is called the light, and Satan is called the prince of darkness. And there's this ongoing contrast and battle between the dark and the light, between God and Satan. And the Apostle Paul recounted God's words to him in Acts chapter 26, verses in 17 and 18. Paul, remember, the light showed brightly on the road to Damascus, and he fell down on his face, and God spoke to him. And this is what he said to him. He said, "I'm sending you to the Gentiles to open their eyes, so they may turn from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God. Then they will receive forgiveness for their sins and be given a place among God's people who are set apart by faith in me." Even God uses the analogy of light and darkness to show what happens when people come to faith in Jesus. They depart from the power of darkness, from the power of Satan, and they're brought under a new power, God's power. And because of their faith in Jesus, their sins are forgiven, and they're brought into the family of God. Exposure to the light ends the power of darkness in our lives. But it's really easy to try to hide darkness in our lives, isn't it? We hide darkness where we think nobody will see it and no one will ever know about it. We try to hide our darkness online, maybe on our smartphones, or if we're really careful, in a safety deposit box somewhere. But no matter how hard we try to hide darkness, it's always there, and it's always at war with the light in our lives. And letting the darkness live on produces sin in our lives. And sin is the spiritual word for anything that represents the darkness in our lives. Whether it's greed or immorality or lying or cheating, those are all sin. Anything that represents darkness. The thing is, though, for those of us that know Jesus and we have the light, the only thing that darkness has to offer us is pain and guilt. And I think many of us were walking around living with this overriding pain of guilt about the struggles and sin that we've been trying to hide from the light. Well, the awesome thing about the light is that if you'll expose the darkness you've been hiding from the light, not only will you receive forgiveness and a clean slate and a fresh start, but you'll also be able to let go of the guilt that's been plaguing you. Maybe this morning, that's you. You need to bring an area of your life into the light about which you've been experiencing guilt. And that's one of our next steps this morning. And maybe that's where you are. You're tired of carrying the guilt. Well, guess what? You don't have to keep carrying it. You can just let it go. You can bring it to Him, expose it to the light, and then you can let go of it. You know, the darkness is overwhelming in this world. And our enemy uses darkness to keep people living in desperation and living distant from a loving God. But here's the thing about the darkness. The light shines brighter than ever when it's in the darkest places. The light shines brightest in the darkest events in history, in the worst and darkest circumstances, and in the darkest moments of our lives. It's when darkness is at its greatest that the smallest glimmer of light, the faintest appearance of light, shines more brilliantly than the sun, and it brings hope. Because light shines so brightly in the darkness, I think it's so important that we have relationships with people that are not followers of Jesus. It's really easy to get wrapped up in a world full of Jesus followers and forget that there's a lot of darkness right here in our own neighborhoods, in our community, and in the East Bay. Now, single ladies. All my single ladies. Just kidding. I'm not going to sing. I'm not telling you that you should go out and start missionary dating. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying go out and start dating unbelieving guys so that you can get them to come to church. No, don't do that, okay? Men, I'm not saying that you don't need to have strong Christian friends as brothers that will help you stay strong in your faith. That's not what I'm saying. Students in the room, I'm not telling you that you don't need to be in the church and that you don't need Christian friends to support and encourage you. You actually do need friends that are followers of Jesus, and you need to be connected in fellowship. However, I am saying that if your whole network of friends and your family consist of only Christians, then you have missed out on Jesus' command to let your light shine before others. The angels in heaven don't celebrate when two Christians become super close friends, do they? No, it says in Luke chapter 15, verse 7, in the same way, there is more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns to God than over 99 others who are righteous and haven't strayed away. In fact, it's sort of overkill to bring more light into a room that's already full of lights. It's like, let's see who has the brightest light. Let's compare lights. Let's make it a competition. I mean, that's just silly. It doesn't make sense. And it definitely doesn't add value to God's kingdom. That's why Jesus said, take your light out, take it out of hiding, put it on its stand so it can bring light into the darkness. In Matthew 5, verse 15, Jesus said, neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. I love how Jesus uses simple, everyday examples to teach great spiritual truths. Jesus is like, hey, nobody lights a lamp and then hides the light. That just doesn't make sense. He says, when you light a lamp, you let it shine and it brings the whole house into the light. Notice Jesus didn't say, run to your church, run to your connect group, run to your life group and hide from all the darkness that's out there. Jesus didn't say, run to your house where it's safe and there's lots of light and hide out there until the darkness passes. That's not what Jesus said. Jesus said, let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds. I think it's really interesting that Jesus said, listen, let the world see your good deeds. I want to unpack that a little bit just so we can be clear. I don't think Jesus is saying, hey, I want you to show off your good deeds for the world to see. I don't think that's what he's saying. I think what he's saying is he wants us to live for him out in a dark world, and he wants us to bring his light into the darkness. Are you in business? Well, when you're tempted to fudge the numbers a little bit to make more money, don't do it. Don't do it. When you have an opportunity to tell one little lie and you stand to gain a whole lot from it, and everyone is watching you just waiting to see what you're going to do, then let your light shine by doing the right thing. Are you a coach? When the opposing coach or players lose control or the referee makes a horrible call and the dark world is watching you and they're thinking they know exactly what you're going to do, but then you do the right thing, you do what Jesus wants, in that moment you're letting your light shine. Are you a teacher? Let your light shine. Are you in construction? Are you a CEO? Are you a stay-at-home mom? Guess what? Let your light shine. When you're at the park and the gossip starts rolling about that bad mom over there. When the circle of moms you hang out with at the same time every day at the same park start gossiping, what you do in that moment, that is how you let your light shine. When you leave the circle of your friends, quote, that are gossiping about this other mom and you walk over and introduce yourself and ask her how her day is going, it's in that moment that you are a light. Just a side note, by the way. That circle of so-called friends that gossips about everyone and they try to include you in that gossip, I hope you know the second you walk out of that circle, you become the center of the gossip. You know that, right? Just want to make sure. Listen, in a world full of darkness and desperation, it's really easy to seclude ourselves in the light, to surround ourselves, to cover ourselves with the light, to avoid darkness at all costs. It's honestly a lot easier to just find people of the light and invest in relationships with them, spend holidays with them, serve with them, love them. But I don't think that's what Jesus meant when he said, let your light shine before others. Let me ask you a really telling question, and I want you to answer this yourself. Who do you have in your life every day that you're praying for and trying to reach with the love of Jesus? Who do you have in your life that you're praying for and that you're trying to reach with the love of Jesus? Seriously. One of the next steps this morning on the next steps card says, I'm committed to becoming proactive in my efforts to bring, and you fill in the blank with someone's name, to bring this person to church on Sunday, January 4th. Well, that's next Sunday. Pastor Matt is going to start a series called Purpose. And I can't think of a better Sunday to bring someone back to church or to bring someone to church for the first time than this coming Sunday. Matt is going to talk about how nobody plans to lead a purposeless life and how easy it is to slide into living without purpose. That's why we put the little invite cards in your bulletin this morning. Well, use them this week. Use those invite cards. And if in this moment you're honestly struggling to think of the name of a person in your life right now who doesn't already have the light, then guess what? You have some work to do. You have some work to do. Maybe you need to check the box by the next step that says, I'll live with a renewed sense of urgency about bringing those far from God into the light this year. And that simply means that if you've had no urgency, no connection with the unchurched, with those that don't know Jesus, then you're going to make it a point to start making those connections right now. And guess what? It's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to go out this afternoon and make 20 new unchurched friends. Not even 10. But I think you should start by praying and looking for at least one new friend that doesn't know Jesus. And then you should start investing in a relationship with them. And that's how you should start. I know that some people are probably thinking to themselves right now, well, Jeremiah, I just don't know any unchurched people. Well, then I would say back to you, do you go to the same restaurants over and over? Do you go to the same Starbucks or Pete's Coffee every day? Do you visit the same bank several times a week? Do you shop at the same grocery store and see the same checkout clerk every time? I mean, who cuts your hair? No, really, who cuts your hair? Some of you need to think about getting a new hairdresser. Just kidding. Let me ask you, do you know anything about where the people in those places are spiritually? Have you gotten to know them well enough that if you ask them about their spiritual life, they won't be offended? Please don't just leave here today and go to your favorite restaurant after church and start quizzing your waitress about her relationship with Jesus. First, go back to that restaurant every week for a few months. And then when you've built that relationship with her, then invite her to dinner at your house one time. Because, she's always serving you dinner and your family dinner. And so now it's your turn to repay the favor, right? And you have no idea how easy it is to have a spiritual conversation if you're willing to build a relationship. Starbucks is a great place to have spiritual conversations. The staff at Starbucks is always great, in my opinion. I mean, if you go back to Starbucks again and again and you see these people, they like totally become family, don't they? I mean, they remember not just your name, but your entire family's names, and they remember everyone's drink. I might have a little bit of a Starbucks problem, I'm going to be honest with you. But really, though, you'll get to know the staff at Starbucks pretty well, and then you'll start praying for them, and you'll start praying for an opportunity to talk to them about Jesus. And then here's the thing, you'll be blown away when God just lays it in front of you. He puts it in your lap. Tom Rainer, president of the Lifeway Research Group, wrote in that same book we talked about earlier, The Unchurched Next Door, that 82% of the unchurched are at least somewhat likely to attend church if invited. 82%, 8 out of 10. He also found that only 2% of church members invite an unchurched person to church, while 98% of churchgoers never extend an invitation in a given year. That means in a room this size, only 5 or 6 people will invite someone to church in 2015. That's just not going to cut it. That's just not going to get the job done. The Lifeway Research Group found that 7 out of 10 unchurched people have never been invited to church in their entire lives. Rayner says that most people come to church because of a personal invitation from someone they know at least decently well. I hope you're starting to get the picture. I hope you're starting to see why it's so imperative, it's so important that the church, which is full of light, heads into the darkness to build relationships with those that are far from God. It's not something we should do casually. It's something we should do with great urgency. This is a big part of what Blue Oaks Church is all about. In fact, one of our vision statements says that we should be a church full of people that know how to have everyday conversations about Jesus. We are intentional about investing in people and bringing them to Blue Oaks. Jesus calls us the light of the world. In Matthew chapter 5, and that could be a little bit confusing. And I don't want you to miss the point of what Jesus means when he calls us the light of the world. I don't think he means that somehow we're supposed to be the center of attention. You know, maybe the problem with my New Year's resolutions is that they normally revolve around me. They're all about what I think I want or what I think I need for myself. I mean, I need to lose weight. I need to get my finances in order. Me, it's all about me. Well, don't be confused. Jesus isn't telling us that we're the star of the show. I think he's telling us that we're lights that aren't supposed to point to ourselves, but we're intended to point to Jesus, the true light of the world. When Jesus is the focus in our lives, his light shines so brightly that it's impossible to hide it from others. I read a story about a Hindu trader in India who once asked a missionary, "What do you put on your face to make it shine like that?" And with surprise, the missionary answered, "I don't put anything on my face." And the man questioning him began to lose patience, and he said emphatically, "Yes, you do. All of you who believe in Jesus seem to have it. I've seen it in the towns of Agra and Surat, and even in the city of Bombay." And suddenly the missionary understood, and his face glowed even more, and he said, "Now I know what you mean. And I'll tell you the secret. It's not something we put on from the outside, but it's something that comes from within. It's the reflection of the light of God in our hearts. And that's what it means for us to be the light of the world. We should reflect the light of Jesus in our hearts to the world. It's not an acting job, and it's not false humility. It's a light that can't be put on from the outside, but it reflects from God's presence on the inside, from our hearts. So if my New Year's resolutions can't revolve around me and what I think I want or I need, then what does God want for me? What does God want for me? Well, Jesus calls us the light of the world, and then he challenges us, hey, let your light shine brightly for the world to see. And if you want to set some personal goals for weight loss or your finances or for self-improvement, go for it. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's a great idea. But guess what? If you lose 10 pounds in 2015 and you feel better about yourself, that's not going to make 2015 the greatest year of your life. And it's certainly not going to make it anyone else's best year ever. What could make 2015 the greatest year for someone else is helping them experience the life-changing power of knowing Jesus. What if we decided together that we're making the resolution to be a light to the world this year? What if we determined to let that define 2015 for us as a church and as individuals? I think this idea of being light in the darkness is one of the most important job descriptions that Jesus gives to his followers. Author Robert Fulghum tells this story of one of his professors, a wise man whose name was Alexander Papaderos. Say that 3 times fast, right? At the last session on the last morning of a 2-week seminar on Greek culture, Dr. Papaderos turned and made the ritual gesture. Are there any questions? And quiet quilted the room. These 2 weeks had generated enough questions for a lifetime, but for now, there was only silence. No questions? Dr. Papaderos swept the room with his eyes. So I stepped out and asked, Dr. Papaderos, what is the meaning of life? The usual laughter and giggling followed, and people stirred and started collecting their items to leave. Dr. Papaderos held up his hand and stilled the room and looked at me for a long time, as if he was asking with his eyes, are you asking a serious question? And seeing from my eyes that I was, he said, I'll answer your question. Taking his wallet out of his hip pocket, he fished into a leather billfold and he brought out a very small round mirror about the size of a quarter. And he shared this story. When I was a small child during the war, we were very poor and we lived in a remote village. One day on the road, I found the broken pieces of a mirror. A German motorcycle had crashed there. I tried to find all the pieces of the mirror and put them back together, but it was impossible. So I kept only the largest piece, this one. By scratching it on a stone, I made it round. I began to play with it as a toy and became fascinated by the fact that I could reflect light into dark places where the sun would never shine, in deep holes and crevices and dark closets. It became a game for me to get light into the most inaccessible places I could find. I kept the little mirror, and as I went about my growing up, I would take it out in idle moments and continue the challenge of the game. But as I became a man, I grew to understand that this was not just a child's game, but a metaphor for what I might do with my life. I came to understand that I am not the light or the source of the light, but light, truth, understanding, and knowledge is there, and it will only shine in many dark places if I choose to reflect the light. So that I am but a fragment of a mirror whose whole design and shape I do not know. Nevertheless, with what I have, I can reflect light into the dark places of this world, into the black places in the hearts of men, and change some things in some people, and perhaps others may see and do likewise. This is what I'm about. This is the meaning of my life. And Jesus calls us the light of the world. But what does that really mean? Well, I think Dr. Papaderos got Jesus' point. Our job, our responsibility as followers of Jesus isn't to be the source of the light, but it's to reflect the light, to reflect Jesus into the darkness. And you know, this business of reflecting Jesus into the darkness, it's risky and it's dangerous business. I want to make sure that you understand the challenge of reflecting Jesus into a dark world. The darkness of the world is messy and it's hard to stomach. And if you truly commit to reflecting Jesus, you're probably going to face some opposition. It's not going to be easy. The enemy, although he's lost the war, he's still fighting the battle for those living in the darkness. And he wants to destroy and take down anyone he can with him. So don't be shocked or surprised when it gets hard to reflect Jesus into dark places. Darkness will try to intimidate, drown out, and destroy anyone who threatens to expose it to the light. Don't be surprised when your neighbor's husband doesn't like you and it's for no apparent reason, but you'll know it's because they're living in the darkness and you represent the light, the enemy of the darkness, and you're reaching out to his wife with Jesus. Don't be surprised if you experience some blowback at a prayer group that God called you to start in your workplace that's encouraging believers and that's reaching the unchurched in your workplace. You'll get a new supervisor or some new organizational policy will try to limit what God is doing. But don't be shocked, because that's how the darkness works. Listen, the price of being willing to reflect Jesus into the darkness is steep. That's why 98% of us, of those in churches around the country, we sort of hide the light whenever we walk out of the church. Nobody should be shocked when prayer is no longer allowed in schools or when legislation attempts to limit religious freedom. That's the darkness fighting a losing battle against the light of the world. And listen, when you choose to be a light in the darkness, it can be really scary. It can be scary to navigate the darkness. The psalmist David wrote in Psalm 119, verse 105, he said, "Your word is a lamp for my feet, a light on my path." And if you're going to stay the course and stay on God's path, then you're going to have to get connected to him through his word, through the Bible. The darkness is going to try to sabotage your journey on the path of right living with God, but the word of God will continue to light your path. And if you're going to reflect Jesus into the darkness, then you're going to need to constantly connect with God through fellowship with other believers, through prayer, and through reading the scriptures. If you're going to be a light, then you're going to have to stay connected to God. You know, maybe this morning you've become aware of the need to reflect Jesus into the dark places in this world. But to be honest, you can't help but feeling like you've been losing more battles with the darkness than you've been winning. Or maybe this morning you realize that you're not reflecting Jesus into any dark places because you're actually living in the dark yourself. It might be that you've never actually given your heart and life to Jesus, and so you're still living according to the kingdom of the darkness. Or maybe you've been a believer for a long time, but you've been so disconnected from God that your light is honestly pretty dim at this point. It's pretty dim. Or maybe your light is fine, but you realize for the first time today you've got to get out of your comfort zone and you've got to go meet some people who are living in the darkness with the hope of reaching them for Jesus Christ. What if you made a resolution this year that's so much bigger than any resolution you've ever made? What if instead of focusing on yourself, you decide to ask God, God, what do you want for me and from me in 2015? What if you resolve to care more for the needs of your neighbor than your own needs this year? What if you resolve to reach at least one person with the love of Jesus in 2015? What about two? What about an entire family? What if you ask God this morning, God, please help me by your power to expose as many people to your light in 2015 as possible? How do you think you'll feel about achieving those resolutions? How do you think you'll feel next year, right here, back in this room, the last Sunday of 2015, if God has allowed you to reach at least one person with his love? Do you think you'll be more personally satisfied with 2015 than you are right now with 2014? Because I bet you would be. I bet you would be. I'm challenging you this morning to make a resolution that you're going to be a light in 2015. And I want you to start this week, this next Sunday. Don't make excuses. Don't let anything keep you from being light this week. People are making resolutions to come back to church. This is a great time to start, to make this resolution and bring someone to church next week. Strike while the iron is hot. I want to hear more stories about people whose lives have been changed because you kept showing up at their Starbucks every day and you got to know them and they had no idea, but God was using you to introduce them to the light, to bring them into the light. Let's make a resolution that means something this year. Let's make a resolution that has some kingdom impact, some eternal value. Whatever you do, let your light shine this year. Would you pray with me as we close? Dear Jesus, thank you for this time of worship. Jesus, we ask you to help us to make a commitment to be a light in the darkness in this new year. Help us to accept your challenge to let your light shine through us, shine into our homes and into our community and into our world. We ask that you break our hearts for those who are living in the darkness. For those we encounter each day that don't know Jesus, Lord, help us to be sensitive. Lord, bring people into our lives that we can help bring into the light. Help us as a church, Lord, to have a singular purpose and focus in 2015. To introduce more people to Jesus than ever before. We're so thankful for an incredible past year, God. We've seen you do so much, but we ask that your kingdom, God, that it will come to life in 2015 like it is in heaven. That you'll do things this year, God, that the only explanation could be because of you and your power. Let us be a small part of that. Lord, help us not to leave the same as we came. Help us not to hear your word, Lord, to hear a challenge from you. Help us not to feel the moving of the Holy Spirit in our hearts and lives and then just walk away unchanged. Pray that we wouldn't be able to rest easily, God, until we're fully committed to bringing the lost into the light. Jesus, we pray as we take the offering this morning, God, we just ask that you would multiply it, God, that you would make more of God, make more of it than we even give, God, so that it can be used for your purposes, for your kingdom. God, we ask that you would bless it. We're so thankful for everything you've done for us. In Jesus' name.